Hi, hello, and welcome to Scale to Exit with Alejandra Santos, your hostess with the mostest. And today I have a special guest, not just a guest that's coming in to speak with me and have a conversation, but I have two beautiful guests next to me, Mr. Bro and Miss Bootylicious Penelope. So if you are watching us on YouTube, you can actually see this beauty of guests that we have here bracing me with their appearance. Okay, so welcome to today's episode. Today's episode, I am thrilled and excited to have this powerhouse of a lady having this conversation with me. I mean, she became a CEO at 20, at the age of 20, and a COO at the age of 24. And she has done about 40 M&As. She has bought businesses, sold them. She is a public speaker, has written lots of books on branding and leadership, and she's very well known. And I am very excited to just bring her here. And she just such a warm individual. And if you're watching us on YouTube, I suggest that you go right now, get a glass of wine or a beer or whatever you're into, your popcorn. It's going to be a great conversation. She's going to share some really good information with you all about branding. She's going to share her story. She has a very powerful childhood story that's going to motivate you. It's going to uplift you. She is, such has made so much impact as a businesswoman, as a in the community, and she continues to do this kind of impact by going to public speaking and writing her books. So, yeah, let me just read to you her bio. 1 second. Okay, so Victoria Pelletier is a C-suite executive, a whole human leader, a board director, dynamic speaker, an author, and a diversity champion. She has over 20 years in the corporate world and board of director. She's a #1 selling author and professional public speaker, nicknamed the Turnaround Queen and the CEO Whisperer by former colleagues and employers. Victoria inspires and empowers her team and clients to change mindsets and drive growth in business, leadership, and culture. She's always ready for new challenges, becoming one of the youngest chief operating officers at the age of 24, and has subsequently held roles of president and CEO. She has built and brought businesses, including the purchase of her first business at the age of 20, and has a deep background in M&A and related transactions with 40 under her belt. Victoria was recognized as one of the 100 global outstanding LGBTQ executive role models by Involve, sponsored by YouTube. 2023 Woman of Influence by South Florida Business Journal. Semi-finalist in the 2023 50-50 Woman on Boards, Woman to Watch. 2022 Top 30 Most Influential Business Leaders in Tech by CIO Look. 2022 Most Influential Entrepreneur of the Year by World Magazine. 2021 Top 50 Business Leaders in Technology by Inside Magazine, and a Mentor of the Year by Women in Communications and Technology in 2020. HSBC Bank awarded her Diversity and Inclusion Innovation Award in 2019, and she was IBM's #1 global social seller ranked by LinkedIn in 2019 and 2020. Wow. Are you ready? Like, this is the powerhouse of a woman that's coming to join us, and she's as warm, as sweet, and as humble, like, as one can be, as one aspires to be, honestly. As a prolific motivational, inspirational speaker, so I will share with you guys all of her links, just because you guys need to go ahead and hear her TEDx Miami talk. And without further ado, are you guys excited? Go get your popcorn and your wine. If you are watching on YouTube, if you're not watching on YouTube, then you need to go to Spotify or Apple and just listen to this candid conversation that we have. I really felt like we were just two friends having a conversation. It was really nice. So, without further ado, bro and Bootylicious will go away, but Victoria Pelletier is coming in. So let's go ahead and bring her in. I'll see you on the other side. Well, thank you, Victoria, for joining me today at Scale to Exit. I'm so excited to have you here and share your story. Your experience is remarkable. I am very amazed by the fact that you became a COO at the age of 20, and I really want to know what drives your success and how did you get there at the age of 20?
So two things. COO was age 24, but I did acquire my first company. So technically I was a CEO at age 20.
Okay.
So very, very close. So but I will tell you the journey for me. So if you've ever watched Simon Sinek's Start with Why, that resonates deeply. And so my why was overcoming like a very traumatic childhood and this sheer determination to be better than either the biology I was born into. So I'm born to a drug addicted teenage mother who was very abusive to me, but I was removed from her care and I was adopted to a loving family, but lower socioeconomic. So for me, my drive comes from wanting to be better than biology or circumstance. So I started working at age 11. By 14, I took my first leadership role. So by the time I, bought my first company and became an executive at a much larger company as COO at 24, I had a number of years of experience under my belt and a tremendous amount of grit and resilience.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And what do you think is burning a desire inside of you to become something else than what you were supposed to be?
It's funny because I think sometimes that some of it's innate in my DNA, like fight
Okay.
or flight. I
Okay.
am a fighter, right? So
Okay.
I think there's something in my DNA, but I also think like I'm a big believer in choice. And I sign a lot of my social media posts with two hashtags. One is unstoppable. And that is the nature, nothing is going to prevent me from achieving a goal or an objective that I've set for myself. And the other one is no excuses. And I feel like I've had that mindset since a very young child. I encountered much more adversity than even what I've just briefly shared here. And I never let that be an excuse to why I couldn't achieve. It was an obstacle and I had to go around or through it sometimes. But that mindset is what allowed me to accomplish, at such an early age.
It's so inspiring. Can you tell me what you purchased, what you acquired at such an early age?
Yeah. So I bought a casting agency. So
Okay.
it's funny. My mom, and my mom is the woman who raised me, not the
Yeah.
woman who gave birth to me. And so my mom, put me into acting classes when I was younger. I was the extrovert you see in front of you now was not always.
Okay.
And so she was trying to break me out of my shell. Plus, I'm only 5'8", but I hit this height by the time I was 11 years old. So they didn't know how tall I was going to be. So it was some modeling and acting. And so I had been working for a number of years and being represented by this casting agency, did lots of commercials and different things that they got me. And I also helped them ready new people who were coming to be extras and things like that. And they wanted to move back to their home city and they were prepared to shut down the business. And I just saw this incredible opportunity, one I'd been working for and with for a couple of
Okay.
years.
Yeah.
And so I put together a proposal and acquired the company. Again, at 20 years old, while I was, in university and working full time.
And so when you acquire the company, what did you transform it for like a few years? You kept it for a few years and you sold it. What was your whole experience with that?
So I had to bring in a partner to do most of the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I was just wrapping up university and I was working. So I brought in a partner into it. And then I ended up getting relocated with my corporate job across the country. And at some point, for some of the work that I was doing, it was difficult. So I ended up selling her the business.
Oh wow. Okay, so that was your exit. You basically sold it. Um, I'm not very familiarized with the whole Hollywood industry scene. Did you find that it was a different scene and it was easier over there to make some profits out of it, or has that changed, or is still the same?
Well, I was in Canada at the time, and there
Okay.
was a huge boom because of the Canadian to US dollar. And so there was
Okay.
Hollywood productions that were coming into Canada. So
Okay.
there was a boom at that point. And at the
Right.
time I was in Western Canada. And so there was a lot of development and economic incentives to be there. So I
Hmm.
capitalized on great timing for sure, because
Okay.
years later, it certainly became a lot more challenging. I'm not sure I would have made the same decision to acquire the company.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, you made that decision so early. I'm just so surprised at how you were thinking. 20 years old, I'm just going to buy this company. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go to school still. I'm going to have a corporate job. I'm going to hire some. Like, those are not the decisions that a normal 20-year-old make. So,
No, I think I'm anything but. I spend a lot of time talking to people now who want to talk about career path and help me
yeah.
mentor them. And I'm like, I'm not typical. Let's be clear. Like, I'm an anomaly somehow. And so, like, I aspire for people to be able to follow in that path, but I know it's unusual.
Yeah, you're an entrepreneur at heart. Like, that's basically ingrained in your DNA as well. So the COO at 24, how does that came to be?
So it's interesting. As much as I operate with what I refer to as strategic intentionality,
Hmm.
being strategic in developing plans and then intentional around how you achieve those. I also open myself up to just opportunities as they come and following um, head and heart. Sometimes they're different decisions, and so this was one. I went to school to be a lawyer. So I graduated high school at 16, was coming out of university at 20. I worked through at a bank while I was in university, and got promoted through the ranks quite quickly. They sent me across the country for an assignment and ended up offering me a promotion. So what I thought was going to be 1 year off before I was going to go to law school, and possibly moving back out to Western Canada, neither of those things ever happened. I kept putting it off because I fell in love with the corporate world.
Hmm.
And I was in leadership positions, and I loved my role as a leader. Even though, as I mentioned, I became a leader at 14 years old,
Yeah.
assistant manager of the shoe store that I worked at. I loved it. So I, continued down that path. I spent, I think it was 6 years working in banking, call center operations, in a senior leadership role. And then I got recruited to be the chief operating officer and general manager for a private BPO, business process outsourcing company. So
Okay.
outsourced call center, tech support, sales service. And it was a huge stretch role for me, but I took the leap. I believe I've always put myself in a place of discomfort because that's actually where the growth comes.
I love that you're saying that, because to anybody that's listening out there, like, that's where growth happens, when you put yourself out of your comfort zone and you believe in yourself that you can do it. And if it doesn't happen, then at least you tried and it's an experience, right? It's a good experience for the books. So that's when you started. Okay, so your first acquisition at 20, and then how was that on the deal making process? Like, did you find that kind of interesting? Because you did so many acquisitions after that. Is that what led to the other ones?
So I came at it with no experience, but I
Yeah.
was, quite business savvy. By the way, like even though I wanted to be a lawyer, the
Yeah.
subjects I excelled at in school were math and science. So, for me to look at the financials and make some decisions, and I was capitalizing on the two guys who'd been running it who wanted to move back to their hometown.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I understood all of those dynamics. I've learned a lot since that first acquisition and the sale. I will tell you, the sale was more emotional because the partner that I brought in became a
Yeah.
friend, was a friend. And so, you can tell people not to get in business with people, that are friends, but people
Mhm.
do business with people they like and they trust.
Yeah.
So the first one was successful for me, but I've
Mhm.
learned a lot since then. I've actually built other businesses and then
Mhm.
subsequently sold and then done some other acquisitions. And
Yeah.
the last one that I did for myself personally learned significantly on the journey through my due diligence. It was also a much larger transaction than that first one was. I think I paid
Let's.
I think I paid 10,000, by the way. And this is like over 30 years ago, but
Wow.
for 20 years old with, still in school, it was a lot
Yeah.
of money.
Yeah, $10,000. Wow, for a business that you exited and then you learned so much, it's experience itself just so valuable. But I know you said you have over 40 M&A transactions. So, and I mean, we cannot go through all of them, but can you like tell me, share a few of those that, like you said, you learned a lot about the last one. Which one was the one that you, if you want to share, cash out the most? Like, what industries do you suggest people to look into now?
So the ones I've of the 40 plus I've done, less than 10 of them are for myself personally, buy, sell, or build, sell.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my most painful ones is the last one that I sold,
Hmm.
in a because the individual that I acquired it from, despite very significant due diligence, misrepresented some of the client contracts, and I paid a
Okay.
multiple. Paid a multiple of operating revenue, and she
Yeah.
misrepresented operating revenue from some grant monies and things that came in. So that caused some legal situations with her upon my exit. But despite that, I didn't lose any money on the exit, so that was great. Of the balance of those, I don't know, 20 plus are directly for the companies that I worked for. And I've spent the last 15 or 20 years working for large corporate, usually public companies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then the remainder are for the clients that I work with and I support directly. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've played all parts in that transaction, from um, the target acquisition work upfront to due diligence,
Mm-hmm.
and a significant portion has been around the integration activities since.
Okay.
And so, to what I've learned, you know, there's been a few, and there was one where I worked for a corporate travel company, a global publicly traded corporate travel company, and we acquired. We ended a joint venture. We then went public, and we
Mm-hmm.
acquired 6 companies in 18 months. So it was
Mm-hmm.
an intense period of
Mm-hmm.
growth, and I
Mm-hmm.
led North America. And
Yeah.
so a lot of that, I spent a significant amount of time having to do the restructuring, the integration work.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I learned patience, I will tell you, with that one, more on the integration side, because um, if you do your due diligence successfully and you understand some of the risks that you need to mitigate, in this case, there were people that owned client relationships or portfolios within that business that were so intrinsically tied that if I made the wrong decision over restructure because of extra headcount. So there was a woman who was so hard to like get on board, but I knew she was critically important given the portfolio she managed. It took me a year to win her over, but ultimately, as then we continued to do additional acquisitions, she became our biggest change champion.
So how do you navigate that? So do you think that because you've been so experienced with acquisitions and you've done it all across the field, do you believe that one of the biggest drivers, obviously, for to make an acquisition successful would be the leadership component, the people component, the culture component, to have a really strong culture? A lot of people say, I mean, I just care about the bottom number and, revenue and sales and traction and all of that good stuff. But you've been so exposed to everything. You just shared the story about this lady that she needed to get aligned, and she was so crucial for that, like successful that company. So my question is leadership and people really the biggest driver for a successful acquisition, or are we really should be focusing on the numbers?
I see integration and entire business cases fail
Mm-hmm.
because of poor change management. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
combination of
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
For sure, it needs to come from the top. You need
Yeah.
to identify all of the different, we call them personas, like who's impacted differently by this, and how do we manage the change process, the communications, the
Yeah.
enablement for them differently. We start with an outcome in mind, right? Whether it's certainly there's a financial business case, but in many cases, we talk about you mentioned the word culture. Like, are we, which culture? They're different of the companies that are coming together. Like, which one are we buying, or is it a blend of the two? How are we going to achieve that? And I believe culture is the outcome of,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the ways of working, it's the language, it's the actions, it's
Mm-hmm.
behavior of
Mm-hmm.
all of its leadership and
Mm-hmm.
employees. So if that itself isn't a stream in the entire program, then we're going to fail. And this is where I see they go, oh no, project management has that. But you're talking about scope, budget, timeline. We're not
Mm-hmm.
talking about humans who are
Mm-hmm.
affected by this experience. And those humans can be not only the employees for sure, but at the end of the day, that the customers, how are they impacted by this?
Yeah. No, I love that you brought up some really good points because this is like such a big acquisition, like a company coming together with other smaller companies. How is it different than when you were buying your own companies for yourself? Do you look at the same drivers? Do you think that people in leadership are you still something that drives you in your way of making a deal personally, or are you looking at something else?
It depends. For me personally, the first one was incredibly opportunistic, right? I
Mm-hmm.
saw the opportunity. The
Yeah.
next one was a build of a company that was a passion project for me that
Mm-hmm.
grew into a business that I
Yeah.
later sold.
Okay.
And the most recent one was somewhat opportunistic. I was actually looking to acquire a very different type of business, but then I ended up meeting the woman I acquired her company at a hockey arena. I was coaching our children's hockey team, and we just struck up a conversation. And I saw an incredible market opportunity. She did not understand what she had.
Okay.
He manipulated that. That's the one who manipulated the books, mind you.
Yeah.
But so that one was a great like opportunity, market fit, and potential. It was a data and analytics company that she had only focused on one narrow slice, and I just saw a whole opportunity around. But that said, when I'm doing it in the other companies that I worked for, it's about a few things I'm going to evaluate. Is there a piece of our offerings, product, or service suite that we're missing? And then you always think about, do you build or buy? And so sometimes the strategy will be to build. Or are you buying a book of clients for a particular reason that you can embed and grow them? Like there's very different reasons why I've looked at acquisitions, particularly when I look at for the large, Fortune 500 companies that I work for.
So you talk about growth as well. And with the economy doing whatever it's doing right now, the uncertainty going around, you see all these big companies failing, right? Like we have Forever 21 that just went out of bankruptcy. We have Starbucks that is struggling over here. Nike that had to do a collaboration with Skims because otherwise they were not going to grab market share. So like you see all these companies struggling, and then you see the small ones, and we talk about growth. What are some things that people can do to grow without debt, scaling leaner, especially if you want to acquire more businesses or like expand your market reach?
There's many things there. I mean, I think there's some of the examples that you talk about, I think, are understanding the customer and understanding them.
Yeah.
Forever 21 is a great one. Did you not see and read Temu and Shein like coming to take, that consumer away from them? Or as Nike, and I should state, I actually worked for Nike forever ago. And, what did they not respond to the athleisure as that was starting to come out with the likes of Lululemon and Adidas and things like that. So those are some aspects of it. And to your question around like, how do you grow without significant debt or capital? I think there's a great opportunity to partner, so, even to this day, I'm expanding the offerings that we bring to our clients through working with other niche players that can bring to the table. It doesn't make sense for me to invest the capital to build that. I can partner with them. Ideally, they white label it for us, and we can apply a small margin until we gain, more clients in that space, until there's economies of scale to look at then potentially acquiring that partner or a different partner in the market.
I love that you said that, because those are strategies that small businesses put in place as well in order to grow organically and with like limited resources. But I love that you're saying eating at a bigger scale, we always do that as well. We implement the strategies because it makes sense to us. It makes sense to the numbers. And I love that you said about the customer. Learn how to understand your customer, because I think that this is the number one area where businesses fail. Even if they have like been around for years, we see it fails. So why do you think, is it the consumer that's changing? Obviously it is, the behavior is changing, or is it like the company is not adapting fast enough to the consumer and the technological trends that are happening right now? And what can we do to really stay up to date with all of this?
I think it's a mix of all of those things. So I think there's not staying connected to the customer and the evolution in the customer, the different generations that are buying, consuming products or services, and how they look for things, to evolve or change. So I think that's definitely a part of it. But the other thing I see is there's a reticence, particularly actually with larger companies. What I think is great about smaller companies is the ability to be much more nimble. They're not they don't have a massive shareholder suite that need to deliver dividends like and so therefore they're reticent to put in capital to invest. And so that's where I see, like, I've been in situations where there was incredible opportunity, and there was where they'd planned to build. In one case, I remember this instance, the goal was to build out to a $1.2 billion business unit in the next year, growing significantly because of market opportunity and because of the commitment to invest in the resources to help go to market. The company, the investment that was required to deliver those growth resources, they tempered it back. And so ultimately it became a question of, a capital, a growth investment issue versus the opportunity. So they tempered it and they brought it down to like a third of that original opportunity, just because of what they were prepared to invest, and not just what they were prepared to. The fact is, large organizations have multiple asks for capital. And so how do you divvy that out? How do you listen to all the business cases of all of your leaders and make some of those decisions? And so there become trade-offs, quite frankly.
Wow, that's such an interesting case that you are actually sharing with us. Can we go into leadership a little bit and people management, because we briefly touched on that, and I know that this is like such a strong focus for you in your career as well. And I want to talk about emotional intelligence. I want to talk about leadership, people management, and how can business owners become more emotional intelligent themselves to be able to handle the intricacies with their teams.
I wrote a book last year on leadership and culture, even though, as I said, culture is the outcome of. But for me, what I've learned, and I say I've learned it because I made some early mistakes. Showing up as a 24-year-old executive, the only woman, the youngest by a couple decades, I showed up in a particular way that didn't win me a ton of fans. I got a nickname as the Iron Maiden, right? So I've always been able to make the tough business decisions.
I love it.
But what I didn't do is show up with the kind of empathy, with the kind of vulnerability, with the kind of authenticity in my leadership and the way I communicated and I showed up to my team. So I now refer to that as whole human leadership. It's also recognition that we are whole humans that show up to work every day. We can't just drop, our personal lives at the door. So as a leader, is trying to at least understand and have conversations around those things. I'll often tell my teams, first of all, there's no schedules, they're just deliverables, but you can manage my expectations and let's have that conversation. And so what I did notice post-pandemic, this is where we saw this rise, this crescendo in employees, all the headlines of, quiet quitting, the great resignation.
Yes.
This was because finally employees were saying enough. The leadership I entered the workforce in of this, top-down approach is very much changed. There was much more of a drive to work for leaders where there was a reciprocal trust, where there was a commitment to one another's success within the organization. But some of what I'm saying, it sounds so simple, but it can be really difficult. I had to unlearn some bad habits. I had to learn that it was okay to show vulnerability, particularly as a young female executive. I thought it showed weakness, but I've learned that being vulnerable and being authentic, it actually builds much greater connection with people. And then it builds much more of a followership in doing so.
So in your opinion, do you think that organizations should, there's like this huge debate, should keep the work from home or a hybrid approach in order for them to be successful? I have my opinions about it. I mean, I have my own business and I do think that hybrid or remote is a great approach. I like the hybrid approach because you guys get to brainstorm together in an office from time to time, which is very useful. But I do feel like people don't need to be micromanaged. I don't have the time to micromanage people. So what do you think is your take on that, especially when it comes to creating a business that's valuable enough that can go exit for in the future?
I'm a big fan of a hybrid work environment. I work in an environment now where we talk about being remote first, but the reality is we're often getting together to collaborate because you think like the creative juices, the innovation and problem solving comes better together when we are in person with one another. But that said, creating flexibility for a workforce to get stuff done on their own time without, to your point, needing to micromanage them. So very much I'm a supporter of hybrid environment. I am sad to see so many of the companies that have mandated a full return to the physical office and not creating a little bit of that flexibility for their teams.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. So with the M&A piece, because let's go back to, I'm just like jumping around, it's okay. With the M&A piece, going back to the M&A, I love what you talk about capital, being able to have sometimes even if you're big, the big fail, like what I see is because they don't make the right decisions when it comes to capital allocation. They grow really fast. They grow with debt as well. There's a lot of debt in the books. And then the economy happens, situations like this, and wow, I need to like get rid of employees and stores and all of that stuff. As business owners continue to grow and expand and acquire more businesses, you know that term, don't grow broke fast, in finance. Yeah. So what are some things that they can do, going back to like the scale leaner way, that they don't fall into this rabbit hole of like, I want to grow fast and get into debt and all of that capital resources?
Well, here's where I see where a lot of small business owners fail. If they don't
Mm-hmm.
come from a finance background, they try and manage it themselves, get
Yeah.
QuickBooks, whatever they
Yeah.
can. This is where I say invest in a fractional, like
Mm-hmm.
finance
Mm-hmm.
to help
Mm-hmm.
manage the risk.
Yeah.
I'm also a big fan of leverage, but again, like calculated leverage. So even on the personal side, even when I've had the cash to pay off a mortgage, why would I? When interest rates, but I'm not saying that now when interest rates are where they're at, but when they're at 2 or 3%, why would I? So I've always been like, again, on a personal leverage as well as a business leverage standpoint. But again, I
Mm-hmm.
think financial expert. So for me, I said I came from a math and sciences background, so it was a little bit easier for me. But that
Mm-hmm.
said, I wasn't an accountant. So I've
Yeah.
always made sure that I had good accountants. And
Yeah.
more now, as you see many fractional leaders. This is why I say for
Mm-hmm.
businesses to
Mm-hmm.
scale, you don't
Yeah.
need necessarily a
Yeah.
full-time CFO, but you might
Yes.
need one day a week, or
Yeah.
maybe it's 10 or 15%.
Yes.
That's all you pay for, and leverage their expertise to help
Yes.
and scale wisely without like
Mhm.
great risk and too much debt based upon what revenue or capital is coming in.
Yes, I love that you say that, because the fractional CFO, the fractional financial leader, is becoming now more on trend than what it used to be before. But then again, the exit, exiting your business is not something new. People do that all the time. They have done it for years, but it's not something that business owners actually think about doing. So people think, I'm going to build a business. I'm going to have this business. And then what happens after you do that? Do you sell it? Do you go to family member? What would you tell to those people that have a business, right? And, they're baby boomers. There's so many ones coming out, right? They have their business and they want to retire. What is something that you would tell them to put it in place right now, before that way you can have a good exit when you're ready to do that?
Well, since we're talking about boomers, and I've sadly known some who've passed away in test it, so not having things lined up in terms of just so I mean that's just a basic. I would tell everyone listening, like, just to get all of that stuff in place. But also there are teams that all they do is actually work on what succession plans look like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exit. For
Mm-hmm.
many boomers, their children don't want to go into their businesses, right? They
Yeah.
actually say, and I'm actually even thinking more even this generation. I'm a Gen Xer on the and I have kids who are in their early 20s. They say this generation is the first that won't do as well as better than their parents did, right? And
Okay.
so I think more than ever, the boomers and Xers are going to need to start making plans, because likely their children aren't going to want to take over the businesses. And so hire the experts that this is all that they do, is
Mm-hmm.
landed in safe hands, so that
Mm-hmm.
it's most people's babies. They still want it to go on and succeed and
Yeah.
make the most money for exiting.
Yeah, it's really sad when you say that about the story. There's a lot of people that die and they don't really have a plan or in place for their business, and their business just gets broken down into pieces, basically, to whoever is the next heir or estate or whatever it is going on, right? So it's very unfortunate, because you build something and then you don't have control over what happens when you're gone. But you could have control if you actually work towards that before you're gone. So in terms of like the business valuation side, you've done M&As. What has been a case where the business valuation was not, besides the one that happened right now with the lady, was not really good representation? And was it because of people, team? When you look under the hood, what was the problem?
Um, so majority of the time, I found the valuation fair, but going back to sort of how we've managed change and
Mm-hmm.
building a really solid risk plan. And so a lot of the businesses I've been in are services-based businesses.
Okay.
And people do business and buy from people that they like and trust.
Yeah.
And so back to my example of the woman who I kept, who was just like a pain in my butt for a long time, to get her on side with all of the change that came through this
Yeah.
acquisition and what it meant. But like I said, I understood the risk. She
Mm-hmm.
ran, I can't remember if it was 50 or $100 million a year business for us.
Okay.
That was material. And so what I see, and this is where sometimes, particularly with PE firms who come in, they're coming in and gobbling up, and this is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what they do, but without understanding these people dynamics and the
Mm-hmm.
connection around
Yeah.
the contracts, who owns. That's where I see a lot of the fallout come in
Yeah.
terms of the valuation, because and so if they haven't built in a guaranteed revenue stream, like if you're doing a X multiple
Mm-hmm.
on revenue or on profit, if they're
Mm-hmm.
not getting a committed term for those contracts for a period of time embedded in
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not tying in maybe some of those critical resources, let's say for a year or something,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I see it start to fail.
I love that you said. I love that you're putting some. And the reason why I ask this is because I love putting attention to the leadership and the people management piece, because people tend to overlook those big ones, and that's the one that moves the needle. And I love that you're saying about in a service business of somebody that's handling a multi-million dollar portfolio, which is significant to the company's success. And PE companies, what they do is they just like, okay, you're gone, you're here, you're done, and then all of those clients go away with someone else, and it affects a lot the business valuation that was acquired. The sales price wasn't even equal anymore to what's worth the business. So I'm loving that you're putting so much emphasis in that. Can you share some frameworks or strategies that you use to re-engineer the organizations when it comes to people and leadership?
I can't tell you how many re-engineering restructures I've done. That seems to be the role I've played pretty significantly for not only the companies I've worked for, but the clients I've helped out with their M&A as well. And so a big part of it is going back to leadership. So, I mean,
Mhm.
ultimately, I do try and align to the right organizational model.
Okay.
I encourage leaders. I worked with one a few years ago where we in this case it was some pretty significant market dynamics, and they needed to take about 30% of cost out of their business. So it's not a merger and acquisition, but same
Mhm.
approach I took. I said, let's look at what is the target operating model? What's best practice for this
Mhm.
type of organization? And we build the structure in the boxes, and then we put people into them. We're not building a structure around people. And that means difficult decisions. So I got a nickname a few years ago as the CEO whisperer, because when I have these conversations with the C-suite or CEOs, I'm going to
Yes.
tell them what they need to hear, not what they
Mhm.
want to hear. And
I
in
love that.
one
Mhm.
example where it was a CEO and we were taking him through this corporate restructure, and he wanted to move someone that I knew he was close friends with to be like their chief marketing officer, but she had
Mhm.
zero experience in marketing. So
Okay.
why would we do that? So in that's what I do in terms of restructure. Let's look at target operating model. Let's look at best practice. There
Mhm.
might be like let's have a conversation if there's a reason for an exception on this.
Mhm.
Is it a unique product or service you have and you need certain people with that institutional knowledge who are going to stay there? Great. But
Mhm.
otherwise, start with that structure and put people into it. Um, and to the point where, but you also need to understand the risks. You need to
Mhm.
understand and who have
Mhm.
the relationships, who are
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
influencer, where's their risk in your business, and then
Mhm.
you might make some of those exceptions because of that. But the exception shouldn't become the rule.
Oh, I love what you said. You said a really good stuff in here. So basically, look where you're heading, and then basically make sure that you are putting the right people that are actually fitted for where we're going. And if they're not, then we're going to, I guess, put them somewhere else or reorganize the whole situation accordingly. Okay, when it comes to what cultures have you seen that thrive the most and that are like really good for like acquisitions and that bring the business value up?
Oh, that's that's hard. I, I mean, I think what works well best, like culturally, is
Mhm.
when um, there's a period of time to respect both cultures and how they come together. I've seen, companies, and actually, I don't think I'm going to speak out of turn or break any confidence when I say this because it was in the news. When I worked at IBM,
Okay.
we acquired Red Hat. And Red Hat was this a startup that grew exponentially, but they were known for this amazing culture.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say IBM did exceptionally well is recognize that IBM's Big Blue had its own different culture, not in a very different way. And so they recognized, and when they brought them in, they actually let them run fairly independently, because they had such a great culture. And I think that's why, beyond a great product, why people bought the Red Hat product out of necessity for its technology environment. They were also, they were buying a lot of the people behind it. And so that's when I see it work really, really well when we talk about, culture. Where I see it go wrong is where you ram them together. You actually haven't understood the two and brought them together to mesh the ways of working.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that up because it reminds me to when Disney acquired Pixar, and Pixar had this amazing culture, and Disney was like, you know what, just you do your culture because it was the driver of what Pixar's success is, and Steve Jobs was behind it as well. So I love that you said that because it's a very interesting case study to me. Let's talk about something lighter. What do you do on your time off?
Lately, I don't have as much time off, but so I am fanatic about like working out. So I make that a part of my habits, my days. So I
Mm-hmm.
work out generally 3 days a week. Although I'm in the middle of a move right now, so that's been a little less. My workout is moving, and then otherwise, I love to travel. I'm a big foodie, wine lover, and people watcher. So I try and put those last few together. Travel somewhere fun, like sit out on a patio with a great glass of wine and some food with my hubby, and just watch the people go by.
So you go to another country, talk to them about M&As with a glass of wine with your husband next to you.
I because it used to be my time was consumed by my children, but as I mentioned, they're in their early 20s, so I'm an empty nester. So it's given me more of the free time to enjoy some of those other activities.
So for anybody that's listening, you gotta tune into YouTube because she does not look like an empty nester. Please, you do not look like an empty nester. You look amazing. Wow. So, okay, what are some successful habits that you have incorporated in your life? I mean, some habits that make you successful. I hear them all the time. Wake up at 5 a.m., meditate, do all these things, write in your 20 things you need to do today or 3 things. But what works for you?
So I am an early riser, but that's because that's when I go and work out.
Okay.
And that's my time to like my sanity time where I think about my day ahead of me. I catch up on news. So I listen to podcasts while I'm working out. So
Mhm.
that's number one. I've also gotten very good over the years at learning how to say no to the things that do not bring me professional or personal joy or value. I either
Okay.
don't do them, I delegate, or I outsource. So
I
that
love
gives me the time and capacity
it.
for the things that I really want.
So that's a big one because people usually fail at delegating, outsourcing, because they think that they need to do everything themselves to make it good. But you have to delegate in order to grow and outsource as well. What would be, okay, let's play a game. What would be, if I give you A or B, would you like to be buying a business and, making it better? That way you can go for an exit, or would you rather to be in Italy drinking a glass of wine?
Well, A pays for B. So
Yeah, I agree. I like that approach. Okay, so retirement. Do you think I mean, some people don't want to retire. Do you think that this is something that you want to do? I mean, some people are like, I don't want to retire. I'd rather just do something else, do a hobby, and like do that my business.
no, my husband, like the moment he met me, he declared he knew that I was never going to retire.
Okay.
I probably won't, but I will see. I have a bit of a portfolio career, and so portfolio career maybe for your listeners is for a little bit of a bunch of different things. So for me,
Yeah.
that's sitting on boards. I am a public speaker. I
Mhm.
do a little bit of coaching. So I see myself stepping away from the traditional 9 to 5. Not that
Yeah.
work is ever 9 to 5, but
Yeah.
to lead that kind of a portfolio career where I choose a bunch of things that keep me, busy and excited.
Yeah, I see that you're also very active, like on the LinkedIn platform, and you post a lot about movements that you support. Do you want to talk about some of them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've long since been committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion before we had like employee resource groups, et cetera. And part,
Mhm.
being, as I said, this young woman, the only one, and also many of my employees were like new immigrants to the country and kind of trying to create a sense of belonging for them. So
Mhm.
I support a lot of communities in that space. My youngest son is a trans male, so I'm heavily involved in the LGBTQ community. And then I'm
Mhm.
also on the board of helpusadopt.org. Being an adopted individual, it's a way
I
in which
love
I
it.
can give back to others who are looking to adopt as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that, by the way. When you talk about women in business, so you became a woman leader at a very young age. Do you think that we have come a long way from the moment that you became a leader at that age to now when it comes to having this C-suite, roles, or are we still in the same place? Or are we going backwards with everything that's going on?
So we have come a long ways, but we still have a significant way to
Yeah.
go. If you look at even gender parity from a pay perspective, it's over 100 years. The US is in Canada a little bit closer, more around 60. But that's sad. But then you look at the number of female board members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Significantly underrepresented. I am saddened, and we don't need to have a political conversation, but I am saddened to see the state of this nation and how far I think we are going to slip back as we're seeing DEI programs being dismantled. So that saddens me. I hope that people will hold firm to the data, the real statistics, and recognize that we need to do better and continue to try and move and improve things.
As a successful woman in business, what would you recommend to everybody that's woman? I mean, I'm a woman in business and I have to like stand to my for myself so much. Like what would you tell us how to stay strong and how to speak loudly and communicate loudly to everybody to hear us?
Um, one of the other things I didn't say in terms of why I think I got my um, COO job at 24 is I showed up with confidence, and
Mm,
confidence is often equated to competence. And
mm,
I will tell women to show up. I mean, there is data that shows that women typically don't apply for a role unless they feel that they meet like 9 out of 10,
mm,
the skills that are listed. Men at 5 or 6, right? And so that's a confidence issue. And so I'd say show up with confidence, be unafraid to be authentic, to be vulnerable.
mhm,
Don't do like I saw vulnerability as weakness in my 20s. It took until my
yeah,
30s to unlearn some of that. And so
mhm,
show up proudly, like be confident in what the skills you bring to the table, the experiences that you've had, and let that speak volumes for itself. And I will tell everyone, not just the women listening, but build a strong brand. That's another thing that's really helped me in my career is the
mhm.
strength of a brand. People knowing not only what I do, who I do it for, but what I stand for, who I am as a human, as a leader.
Mhm. I love that you're saying that, what I stand for. I tell everybody, you know what, just do your website with your name. Do your brand, not just a company brand, but your person brand as well. Like who you are, because it's a different thing. People are like, I'm just going to name my company my name. No, it's not the same. Can you talk about branding? Because I love that you touched on that. Company branding, personal branding. Talk about how can you create a strong brand?
Yeah, so this is another favorite topic of mine. So I wrote a book on this too, and it was because I started when I started in that COO role. Every function of the organization except for finance reported to me. So sales and marketing, things that didn't report it to me, and I had to learn what I said. People do business with people they like and they trust. Well, they're
Mm-hmm.
buying from people they like and trust, and so that isn't just the what you do. It's or again going back to a Simon Sinek, why you do it. Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to build it without understanding. I didn't have the vernacular. I wasn't calling it personal brand. And so much so that most of my career, I've been recruited directly, and that comes as a strength of brand.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at IBM, LinkedIn had ranked me as IBM's #1 social seller worldwide. And that was a result. And the social selling index is more than the number of connections you have. It's how you show up. It's how you engage with your network. But what I kept consistently was seeing is people were only speaking about what they did and who they did it for. And that's where branding goes wrong because you need to think about it more broadly. Um, your eminence or the what you do, what you're known for. Credibility is one. The next is who are you as a human being, your values, your life stories, what makes you different from other people. And the last one is legacy. And what do you want to be known for? And so for me,
Mm.
is not what I want to be known for. I want to know I raised two really good human beings. I want to know that I was a great leader, that I left the world a better place
Yeah.
than when I left it. So it's all of those things. And we should be starting it. I told my older son when he was coming out of college, I'm like, that start now. And he looked at me, he's like, Mom, are you kidding? I'm like, you'll pivot and you'll evolve it over time, but you're not going to regret starting it at age 22 when he was coming out of college.
Oh, I love that you said that. Wow. So all of those like components basically makes that you're like the brand person, like what you stand for, what your why is, what makes you different, your legacy, your values, your experiences too, right? How do you feel like, because you have so many great experiences, do you usually share all of them or do you hold back a little bit when it comes to branding?
Oh, I have so many life experiences. It's impossible to share them all. That said, if any of your listeners Google me, there's like a lot out there on the web, and it's because
Yeah.
I've now been doing this for a very long time. And my why, as I shared in terms of my
Yeah.
drive, is a big part of my story. But
Yeah.
a lot of the other nuanced pieces and different experiences I've had as I've traveled around the world, because I've been an extensive like business
Yeah.
traveler and things like that, those are great nuggets to come out at different times as I might be thinking about a particular subject, and I'll
Yeah.
share them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that the ones that make such an impact, like your childhood story, like, your how you just go out there and just buy a business, you don't believe in fear. Talk to me about fear. A lot of people have fear. How come you don't have fear?
Um, I have felt fear. I have, so I felt a significant fear of rejection when I was young, given the dynamics
Right.
of my biological mother. Um, being ostracized. I mentioned hitting my height at a really early age. There was lots of things. I have a fear of like not fitting in, of being rejected. I was fearful as a young executive of being vulnerable. So I have fear. I am just much less fearful now. And that's because I'm 48 years old, almost 49 years old. So life has given me some wrinkles and lines and experience to make me fear less. But also I'm like, I also think what's the worst that could happen? Now I'm not talking life and death. I'm not talking about like skydiving, but I mean, when it comes to putting myself into a place where I'm like, oh, this is new. I'm uncomfortable. I'm nervous what this means. That's the moment where I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? Can someone say
Mhm.
no to me? Not everyone
Mhm.
like me, right? So I'm much more comfortable in that zone of discomfort because
Mhm.
greatness happens.
Mhm. Mhm. So being a successful business owner, it's all about mindset. So not, the fear is one of them, fear of success and fear of failure. So what would be some things that you say? I mean, that I don't think that applies this to you because you started so young, but what would be some things that people do in order to overcome those barriers in the mindset to become successful of a business?
I think there's a multitude of ways, and it's different for each person. So I talk a lot about resilience, and
Mm-hmm.
a big part of being resilience is being comfortable with failure, but also it's about surrounding yourself with community and find out
Mm-hmm.
what it is. In some case, that's professional help. In others, it's just people who are going to be radically candid with you and tell you the stuff you need to hear that you don't want to hear, right? It the other piece is getting really clear on what your goal or objective is. I
Yeah.
don't need a vision board to do that.
Mm.
It's in my
Okay.
head. I
Yeah.
got it. I don't need to write it down, but others do. And so I like find out what works well for you. And then it's a blend of each of those things, of getting comfortable with failure, of finding that tribe around you that,
Yeah.
will support you. And then education and experience certainly helps as well.
Yes. So when most 80% of individuals make decisions with emotions. But you're a strong, businesswoman, and how do you switch from making those decisions with rationally, logically from emotion?
It's so funny. I'm very different personally than I am professionally. And like in business, I am so good like at controlling the emotions and being very rational, and the head's making the decision, not the heart. Personally, sometimes I totally get that wrong because I let the heart do a lot of the talking. So I try and bring that out. And so I try and be much more like fact based. I made a recent decision. I sold my house. I love that house, but I live in South Florida where there is flooding and hurricanes. We don't use the backyard. We want to travel more. I'm like, I love this, but does it make sense to hold on to a physical house versus moving into a condo? So the head won because I sold and I made the, and did well because I bought it several years ago. Right. So head versus heart, again, you got to balance those. But that said, sometimes you let the heart win. I think of like how I, came to be with my husband now. It was a very unnatural way for it all to happen. And, here we are many years later and it's amazing.
I love it. Have there been any decisions that you've made on M&As that you say, oh, I regret, besides the one with the lady, I regret this one?
No, even the one with that woman, I learned so much.
So you don't regret it? Yeah. Okay.
No, I generally live with no regrets.
So that's the mindset too, the shifting of the mindset, that most people are like, oh my God, I regret doing this. But you're like, you know what? That was a learning experience. That's actually helped me. I'm stronger now. I know what not to do. Yeah. Okay. I love that. So we talked about a lot of different things today. Is there anything that you want to add that I haven't asked you?
No, but I will leave you remember a little bit around that fear mindset. I have this quote and this picture actually I had made, and my favorite quote is by George Adair. And it says that everything you've ever wanted lives on the other side of fear.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So one time I put in my board, I say FUCK fear, and I just looked at it the whole time, and that was my reminder. I'm like, oh, you're not winning today. I'm winning. So thank you so much, Victoria. You're so, I am just like in wow, your career, your accomplishments. You do not look your age at all. I just hope everybody tunes in on YouTube because you look amazing. I thought you were my age, honestly.
Thank you. Although after being in the middle of a move, I don't feel I look quite as amazing today, but thank you for saying so.
Yeah, and all the impact that you're creating. And where can people find you? I know you have a few books. Do you want to share where they can find your books, all the names? We didn't even go through the books right now, but can you share about that?
No worries. I mean, the best place for people to, find me is on my website, which is victoria-pelletier.com. And from there, they can see each of the 3 books that I've written, but they can also choose to link out to connect with me on the platform of their choice.
Okay, great. Are you having on Instagram? Because I didn't find you there.
I am there. It's I have a public Instagram for my speaking business predominantly. So if you put in my name and Unstoppable, that's one of my hashtags. You'll find me there for sure.
Oh, okay. I find you on LinkedIn, but now I did a little bit of stalking, just legal stalking.
A little.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria Pelletier. Did I say it correctly? Pelletier?
Pelletier. It's fine.
Pelletier. Thank you so much, Victoria Pelletier, for coming to Scale to Exit. I really appreciate your time, your insights, and the awareness that brought to everybody today. And for everybody that's out there, please tune into YouTube because she's a beautiful, gorgeous, not a 49-year-old woman that is really powerful and inspirational. And for everybody out there, thank you guys. Adios. Hasta mañana. Bye.